So I want to kick off, guys, and say hi. And thank you for giving your precious time, because your time is extremely valuable, even in these specific days where every second that you're, whether spreading a message or sharing news or making people have a bit of hope or fixing something or fixing a window or cleaning a street is accounted. So I not only appreciate your time, I triple and 10 times appreciate the time. And I know you're not doing it just out of, you hardly even know me, most of you. So just giving this shows that you want to do something, inshallah, bigger. And not, I wouldn't maybe say it bigger because what you're doing is big, but something in parallel to what you're doing and hopefully can reach a wider audience through the internet. But I want to first start by, I'll leave each of you just say who you are. We'll
Again, ladies first.
Yeah, go ahead, Mouin.
Darling.
You said ladies first. Okay, Allah.
I know your parents. They raised an amazing man. So
thank you. I'll let them know.
Anas, first I want to say thank you for having us on, for giving us a platform, for helping us keep Lebanon focal. One of the things that I am so worried about is that the press and the world forgetting us within 2 weeks and going back to normal, because we are living literally hell on earth and a crime against humanity. So first and foremost, shukran. Min kil qalbna shukran. My name is Mariana Wehbe. I own a PR company in Beirut. That has been completely destroyed. And I work in luxury PR, where I represented clients in design, art, jewelry, beautiful things. And my aim was always to keep Lebanon focal through our work, whether it's to do the first year anniversary of Vogue or bringing the press to the country, bringing everybody here. It was always that, that was the DNA. Right now, I've started an NGO. We're working on establishing it now, called Bebu Shibek. It's really easy and simple. We need to get people back into their homes as soon as possible. Because my partner Nancy and I are in the design world, and because we have access to every architect and interior designer in the country, we have been able to deploy and create a logistic and a supply chain management of about 200 architects and interior designers on the ground that are going home to home, and all we do is fix doors and windows so we can get families back in. Families, whether they are middle class or they are poor, because you have to know that so many of our middle class have lost everything, their business, their homes, everything. So it doesn't stop there. In the process of this, we are also sending out and joining forces with anybody that is open to join forces with us. So if we don't do destruction, we give destruction to somebody else, and liaising in this way. So it's called Bebu Shibek, and that's who I am right now.
Gino.
Anas, thank you, first of all, for hosting us today. I'm going to add to what Mariana was saying, and unfortunately, because I'm not in Beirut on the ground right now, my role has been twofold. One, keeping Lebanon as a topic that people are talking about around the world, especially with the diaspora and the countries they live in. And two is fundraising, because the catastrophe that happened on August 4th couldn't have happened at a worse time, honestly, in Lebanon's history. We were already doing extremely bad, and the coronavirus pandemic made it even worse. And it was a big pylon of problems that led up to the blast. So it couldn't be at a worse time, and it can't be just a couple of days and a couple of interviews on big channels like CNN, etc. People need to be aware this is gonna take us years, if not an entire generation. And a lot of what was lost, we can never get back. So I'm sure Mariana, Mouin, myself, a lot of Lebanon's youth or Beirut's youth, the places that were completely razed are the places where we had all our memories. It's where we probably lived, where we went to school, where we went out, where we took classes. So for us, other than the extremely heavy loss of life and people injured and people homeless, it's basically the identity of the Beirut we fell in love with, the Beirut we know, that also is gone, which also has a huge impact psychologically on everyone there. So,
Absolutely.
since the August 4th, all I've been doing is working hard to try to fundraise and send back, because despite everything and because of the complexities, not a lot of help has been coming in, not as much as we need to. And we're lucky enough to have a very vibrant Lebanese diaspora, which is 4 or 5 times more than the people living in Lebanon, who have really picked up. And so many friendly countries and initiatives from friendly people around the world is amazing, but it's enough for the relief, not for the rebuilding. So that's what we're trying to focus on next.
Mouin?
Thanks, Anas, for having us here. I'm very thankful that this kind of conversation around Lebanon extends right now to the GCC and to a wider range of Arab countries. I think it's very important that we kind of start this, if you want, brotherhood, even though brotherhood has a bit of a negative connotation, but just between young Arab men and women that are fighting for a cause. And I feel through the power of social media, through a platform like yours, through like Gino's, like Mariana's, and like mine, we're able to kind of connect the dots, because I feel for the longest time, each and every issue was kind of concentrated between its people and doesn't go beyond it. And especially if it's at the mercy of the news cycle, one day, your top, your front page news, and the other day you're just completely forgotten about. So I wanted to thank you for giving us this opportunity to reach out to this audience that would otherwise not be reached. Second, first of all, I'm going to keep thanking people. I want to thank Gino for being where he is and for trying to stay up and trying to keep up with our news cycle, even though he's half a world away. I think this is something that needs to be taken into consideration. So thank you for your lack of sleep, Gino. And Mariana, I'm also a big fan of yours. I think Maybe We Should Bake is a great initiative that is trying to meet the needs, the desperate needs of people that are growing more and more as we're discovering over this period of time. What I've been doing since the blast, I was very, very fortunate to be around a group of like-minded individuals that saw that there was this big vacuum of help that needed to be filled because it wasn't met, unfortunately, by our government or any other branch of any other institution. So what we did as Mint Tishrin, as Baytna Baytak, as Embrace Lebanon, which is a mental health clinic, Baytna Baytak, which is an initiative that was created to provide alternative housing for doctors during the COVID-19 outbreak. And what was the third one? And Mouin Lebanani, which is an NGO that was created to basically make Lebanon a much cleaner and more hospitable environment. Mint Tishrin being, of course, a political platform that is from the youth. We created something called Base Camp, which, like Mariana mentioned before, was a supply chain organization which tried to help people more and more. At first, it was kind of an ad hoc initiative whereby someone would come, they would have needs, we would try to help them by either sending scouts to see and assess the damage. They would tell us again what they need. We would provide them with food, we would provide them with shelter, we would help them even try to move. Sometimes the houses that were destroyed were completely demolished and there wasn't any way to salvage it. So I think it's important to notice, whether you're in the country or outside the country, the level of response and solidarity that was exhibited from expats and from Lebanese across the world was just bloody amazing. And it all happened in such a quick instant that it's making me kind of think, I don't know if we actually need the government right now because we're so self-sufficient. It might be a bold claim, but from what I'm seeing, we're doing a pretty good job.
But that's how we've kept the country going for the past 20 years, without government. And we've been trained for this, unfortunately, because without the government for the past 20 years, the country has been standing on private initiatives, young men and women, the private sector, the NGOs that were funded by the diaspora, the NGOs that were working with congenital heart disease, with education, with shelter. So what everybody is seeing in the world now are the real Lebanese, who have been equipped and have been standing and keeping the country standing for the past 20 years or more. We've been trained almost. for this crisis, unfortunately.
Mariana, if I can add to what you said about how it's the Lebanese people who do everything, I'm not sure our friends in the GCC or across the world know this, but in Lebanon, we don't have an ambulance service. It doesn't exist. There isn't a public one. The entire search and rescue and relief and getting anyone who has normal, health problems, it's all by volunteer paramedics and the Lebanese Red Cross. So there doesn't exist a public institution that actually has ambulances that can search for people. So even in that, it might be like in some NGOs, etc. But even the most basic thing where if you're hit by a car and you need to get an ambulance, it's not provided by the state. It's volunteer young men and women who risk their lives to do that and fight Corona and fight other unrest and try to save people from under the rubble. So when we say that the government has no hand in this, they don't have a hand in this. It's all in personal initiative and volunteer work. And that's what keeps us going despite not having a lot to hope for, honestly.
I'll set the tone for all of us. And I'll tell you how I want this to be very objective and very useful. So today, the discussion is not going to be about sect, about color, about religion, about a nationality. I think it's become beyond that. It's become a humanitarian case. And this is where my expertise is in the human. That's what my show is about. This is what this conversation, inshallah, is going to be about. And I'm not educated in politics. I'm not educated in governments, and I'm not an expert, and I won't even try to be one. But where I want to reach all of you who are my fellow human beings is, how do you see this? I'm going to set some questions out, and we can have a joint discussion, or whoever thinks they can answer. So how do you see this? Do you see this a Lebanese matter, an Arab matter, a global matter? Where has Lebanon reached now?
I'd say it's definitely a global matter. It's not just, again, if you just look at the victims of the blast, you see that they're from so many different nationalities, whether it's migrant workers who were here or people just working or living in Lebanon.
Or refugees.
And we've seen the outpouring of support has been, at least in my lifetime, I've never seen this much support and solidarity and humanitarian effort by countries that you don't usually have the good connections with. Like, of course, our brotherly countries, other Arab countries, but to see countries from continents away rise up goes to show that this is a global problem that everyone is empathizing with and trying to help, for sure. And I don't think Lebanon could never stand alone. Throughout its history, we always had friends backing us up from around the world, fellow human beings. And it's still happening. It's still going on almost 2 weeks later. And that's, again, what's helping drive us, know that someone just asked about you, just asked, hey, what do you need? Or just sent you an airplane with something as simple as just bottles of water or some medicine. This is what kept us going. I think what kept a lot of people going on the ground in the face of such utter destruction and hopelessness that they experienced. And so if it was up to me, Anas, I'd say it's definitely now a global issue that everyone cares about, or we hope at least.
I've known. Go ahead, Mariana. No, go ahead.
I just wanted to add to Gino's. I just feel like, the explosion. I wish there was another word for it, because explosion is too little. Like, I wish that there needs to be a new word in the dictionary to what went on in the country. But it was almost like there was a cover on a pot, and the cover came off. This cover, when it came off, it made the world see the real struggle of what Lebanon has been enduring, and what actually we were in a little bit of denial in, because, we were enduring it, we were allowing it, we were living through it, we were finding ways. They would block this, we would find a way to get our money, we would find a way to work. Everything was, it was like this relationship that just burst now, and now everybody has seen the truth, and now it's laid out. This is what has been really happening.
You've noticed, Mariana, from the little that I've started to learn, is that there are two things I want to mention. One, it was very sad for me to see, as everybody would feel sad to see such scenes. But for me specifically, in my lifetime, I've seen how educated, skilled, resourceful Lebanese people are. They are, in my opinion, one of the most talented Arab people currently in the world. I think, I'm not saying this more as a biased opinion, but from my experience, when I meet how educated and how eloquent and how multilingual they are, I'm like, wow, these guys have so much potential. But then I'm like, they can't get a fucking break. I mean, every time something happens, and I'm like, imagine you have the most skilled, let's say, athlete that you know he should be in the World Cup because he's so talented, but then his nutrition is bad, or his club, or his training, and you're like, it's so sad that skilled individual is not even getting a chance to start the race, to be this star, right? So this is one side of it. One thing that you mentioned, Mariana, which I don't know if it has a two-edged sword. Being Lebanese, being resourceful individuals and smart individuals and self-reliant individuals, do you think that backfires because it makes all these parties or these governing bodies, all these municipalities say, oh, they always know how to figure things out. I don't need to do anything. You will find a way. Don't have ambulance, I'm sure they'll figure it out.
Our problem is we adapted. It is a double-edged sword. Yes, we're Lebanese and we're cool and we're amazing. We know how to throw a party. We know how to speak 3 languages. But where's our patriotism? Where's our fight? Where's our anger? Where's our unity? Where is it? Now it's the time to start.
Mariana, I completely agree with the fact that Lebanese adaptability to a certain extent is indeed a double-edged sword, because on one end, you become resourceful, but on the other end, when you have a plan B, plan C, plan D, I'm just going to give a very basic example. When you don't have electricity, you switch to the motor, and there's an entire industry of having a motor generate electricity for you instead of just relying on the state. And that adaptability, unfortunately, can transform into a certain level of complacency, but I don't think that we need to lose hope. I think that what happened, like you said, the lid blew off and we were able to see the level of corruption and disaster that's taking place in Lebanon. And we just need to keep the pressure on, at least in the streets. Now, when it came to what kind of, whether it's a global response or it's a local response, and as you tell me, you were one of the first people that checked up on me, and you're not even Lebanese. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because it is indeed a global, a human catastrophe. And when you see, let's say, an accident happening in front of you in the street, you're not going to check what is the nationality of the person before you try to help them. You just go directly and you save them. And I think that what we need to rely on is just realizing that not just alleviating the symptoms, which is this first aid, first response approach, whereby we're trying to help people on the spot, but trying to get to the core of the problem and trying to fix the sickness and not just the symptoms.
I agree. I think I hear, of course, the anger and the protest and all of these things, but my mind always says it's understandable that people feel that way, but is it sustainable? And even in a family issue, I will always try to take a step back and think, yes, you're angry, yes, you're arguing, but what happens after a month? What happens after 6 months? And I think that's such an important question, especially when now all of you are trying to set standards. My next question is maybe more applicable to Gino, but all of you have friends, of course, that are Lebanese that are outside the country. So recently, I know that people who are not in the country have this guilt that comes with it, that they feel, I'm not on the ground, everybody's there, my friends are there, my family is there, my house is broken, I need to be personally there. What am I doing in this other country? And then you have this struggle, internal struggle of feeling guilty. And if somebody makes a remark, you feel double guilty, and then you have to do, maybe you don't sleep like Gino. So you start to do all of these things that it's built from guilt. And recently we had an interview on AB Talks, and one of the ladies came from an Arab country, and she had to move from a troubled Arab country. And she said, I get so much criticism that, oh, look at you, you're living in a comfortable, safe, the electricity is there, you're so lucky, and you don't get us, you don't know what we're going through, you don't feel what we feel. And she's like, Anas, do they realize that I left my country in my school uniform? I didn't have a bag, I didn't have a choice. My family said, بنرجع بعد شوي. And I just left. I can't go back to my favorite street, my favorite house, my favorite Eid celebration. It wasn't a choice. I come from a troubled country. So Gino, this is also more towards you, because you are literally in that position now, where maybe some people criticize you and say, who are you to talk? أنت من وصل، أنت مو معانا، مش عايش معانا.
Anas, I don't think I earned the expat title yet. لأنه أنا here, I'm visiting my family. يعني I left Lebanon mid-July, and I'm supposed to come back in a few weeks. So this new feeling of being far away is extremely new for me, and it's taking me it's being very difficult to adapt to. One thing I noticed from being on the ground versus being far away is that when you're on the ground, you're consumed by whatever's in front of you. So if something's happening, you're helping out this building, this is your entire belief system, your entire world for that moment. But being far away and having such a large platform, it's been extremely tougher, because you see the intersection of what everyone is feeling, something very bad in each neighborhood, in each building, and each problem, whether it's someone that was injured or someone who lost their loved one or someone who they can't find. So instead of just being angry or devastated about this one thing that would have been in front of me, I was being angry and sad and devastated to a much smaller degree, of course, with everyone. So this bird's eye view of everything happening in Beirut, I think, personally, I don't think it replaces being there, and I still feel extremely bad that that the 1 month I decide not to be in Beirut, that this is what happens, and I can't go back right now. But I also see the benefit of having a more wider view of what's happening and knowing where you can direct attention, resources, make sure things that aren't being given enough attention are given attention. So, you have the hip spots, the hip streets in Beirut that everyone was going to, but there were closer ones that are more working class streets that no one was heading to, because simply they didn't know about them. They never went out there, their school wasn't there, so they maybe just drive past it but never really knew that existed. So we helped switch a bit of the aid coming into those neglected parts of the city, that it's not like people are neglecting on purpose. Of course, it's just they're more familiar, they have a better connection with the more hip and popular streets that were affected. So it definitely doesn't feel nice to be abroad, but I wouldn't speak on behalf of expats, because I'm here for basically a month only, and I'm coming back to Beirut, of course, and I just left Beirut.
Yeah, I'm addressing this, I mentioned Gino because you're literally now not in Beirut in the midst of this, but I could only, when I heard that girl talk about leaving her country, I could only try to feel for all the Lebanese people that are outside, and they feel hopeless, they feel numb, they feel they can't do much, although they can. Like, just look.
They're not hopeless.
Masma.
They're not hopeless. They're our hope.
Absolutely.
They give us energy.
They are our hope.
Give us money.
And for every
money.
But just money, and those who call every single day to check on you. Those, I mean, the Australian community in Australia, I never knew them. I've been overwhelmed. I've been on my phone from 8:30 to 11, what Gino does every day of his life, which I never used to do, from people we don't know. I believe it is much harder to be abroad than it is to be here. I believe it is easier for us because it gives us a chance to go on the street and to put our rage and to have a voice and to do something and to feel. I believe it's so much harder for them. And I have the utmost respect for every single Lebanese that had the courage, which I don't have right now, to leave the country and try to give their kids and their life a better chance. Without them being abroad right now, without their support for the past many years bringing in money to the country, without them being abroad right now and have the clarity to think for us when we cannot, we will not be able to survive.
لحظة Mariana.
I'll give you an example like Impact Lebanon. We're well educated.
Mariana, your signal is
Breaking up.
up and down.
Hey, Anna.
لحظة, I'm giving it a few seconds, just hopefully that stabilizes.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you, but you're...
Sorry.
I'm in the middle of nowhere, to be really honest. So it's okay. It'll get dark. It's all right.
Okay, as long as we can hear you, that's even more important.
That's fine. They are so important to us. And whoever feels hopeless, please don't. Just putting the word out there, connecting us to people, sending money, asking about us. There's so much that they are doing, and we are very grateful to them.
I think I'm looking at 3 individuals that make up a team of a much larger team. Each has its function, each has its role. مثل ما Gino just mentioned, he has maybe the wider view, but then he can call Mouin and say, by the way, priority is here, you need to go there. So you see,
That's what we were doing actually. The first couple of days.
Okay, so I'll tell you my next part is Dima, who's a colleague of mine, and she's here also today. She wanted to attend live. So I was sitting and thinking about this session. And I was like, you know, Dima's Lebanese, she's young. She represents the young generation that are not gonna stay quiet. They want to make change. So I asked her if you were sitting with the guys and lady, what would you ask? And what is important for you as a young, youthful, Lebanese, passionate woman, right? And the first part, so I'm gonna read this off my phone just so I quote her. She said, fuck the word resilience.
I don't mean.
She said, Anas, I'm 26 years old. And through these years, I've seen Beirut break down 4 times. She says, I still remember it. And this is not normal. People shouldn't be going through this. It's not normal for human beings to go through these at such a young age. So first, this is my first point, and I want to hear your feedback on that.
Can I say that? Can I comment on this? I think, I think the word, if I hear the word resilience one other time, or if I hear the sentence, pray for Lebanon. Phoenix, pray for Lebanon. I'm going to vomit. I have
rise like the phoenix.
Yeah. Listen, it's not normal to live in this is not, by the way, this is not the first time someone calls me to ask me if I'm alive. This is maybe the 3rd or 4th time, which is an absurd situation to be in. We are in a country where we're constantly under attack, you feel, whether it's from outside force, whether it's from an internal force, and it's a very difficult position to be in. And I think we are resilient, but we don't need to be reminded that we're resilient. We have a sense of solidarity. We don't need to be reminded of that. What we have to focus on is certain solutions that need to be implemented in order for us to move further in life. It's one thing to label, and it's another thing to go into action. And Anas, if I may also just go back to a small point that you spoke about regarding whether if you're in the country, if you're outside of the country, if I may, I receive a lot of comments because I went live on Gino's platform at some point. I was his, let's say, correspondent in Beirut, and I would go live on his platform and show people. And at some point, people started flocking to my account and started telling me and asking me how they help, and they feel helpless. And to just answer them, one single message asking me if I'm okay means the world to me. And if people want to stay or if people want to leave, that flight or flight choice, both of them are completely warranted. It's okay if you leave the country, and it's okay if you stay in the country. Sometimes I would, to be honest, feel bad if I were to go, let's say, to my house in the mountains to just take a break, because this stuff can be very, very overwhelming. And
I am today.
Yeah, and Mariana is proof of that, and that's totally okay, because you need to preserve your mental health if you want to be able to continue in this fight. And there is nothing wrong with taking some time for yourself. You, Anas, always are an advocate for mental health, and one of the ways that we can survive and stay in this fight is just by taking some time for ourselves and not feel guilty and not think that your absence means that someone is not being helped. No, we're doing the best that we can, but we have to realize that we're all human and we all have our needs, and we need to remind us this of ourselves constantly. And thankfully, we do have an amazing support system to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to continue, we do need to be able to rest. And
Absolutely.
we do need to be able to see our families, and we do need to be able to get the love back and all of it. Otherwise, we would just, we would all falter at everything that we do. So everybody who is abroad, don't feel guilty. We really love you. We love you and we need you.
Yeah.
Anas, I think the resilience thing, we talked about this already several times, but the problem is, if we're not resilient, nothing would happen. So we're in this place where we shouldn't have to deal with this, because if you don't deal with it, no one else will. So this is the hard and the rock place that most Lebanese find themselves in. And so far, from the forest fires in 2019 till the blast on the 4th of August in 2020, you see people take the initiative immediately and go to work. If you take a step back, you'd be like, why are you doing this? This is not your job. This is not normal. Stop doing it. But if you don't, nothing else will happen. So no one will get people out of the rubble if you don't do that. Of course, I know that someone might take advantage and be like, "Khalas, it's fine. They'll take care of themselves." But I think August 4 was the threshold, because no matter how much you try to find another option, like Mouin said, if you don't have electricity from the power company, you buy it from your local diesel generator, blah, blah, blah. But now we're at a point where 300,000 Lebanese people don't have any other option. So they were sitting at home or at work, literally the safest thing you're supposed to do. Like they weren't out on the streets, they weren't up to no good. They were sitting in their own homes, the only sacred, safe space everyone should have. And that is gone. And that isn't coming back anytime soon. So to Dima, your friend who said that, I agree, fuck resilience. This is such a bad word. It's like if someone is sad, you come, someone is depressed about something, you say, yeah, at least this didn't happen. That's not gonna make you feel better. You just need to feel bad a bit now. And it is okay to feel bad and to feel angry and to feel like there isn't any hope. But for me, from the bird's eye view, I see that so much has changed this time, and it's not up to people just being resilient and adapting anymore, because there's nothing to adapt to anymore. Basically, 300,000 houses are gone and they aren't coming back. And you can't tell these people, hey, yalla, be resilient and don't change anything. No, they can't. Even if they don't want to, they have to now. And that's why we need to all be together, supporting each other through this hard time. Okay, we are resilient, but that's not an excuse to have to go through all this stuff.
To add to your point, when thankfully nothing happened to me physically. I got a few bruises and I'm fine. And when I tell people what happened to me, they tell me, yeah, it's okay. At least you're not killed, or at least you're not completely disfigured or whatever. It's okay. But
you should not be going through this.
But that is not a measurement of success, people. Just because I'm alive does not mean that I should shut up. No, I want to be a normal human being with normal rights, with the ability to express myself and the ability to live the life that I want. Just because I'm alive does not mean that I should completely forget the fact that I'm living a half life, if you will. Right. I think it's very important to stress that resilience is just the tip of the iceberg. Doesn't mean it's not everything.
It's like food and shelter. You need more to be a human than just eat and have a roof over your head. That's every other organism on Earth.
It was actually my second point with my conversation with Dima, and she said it's not just about life or death, which she just said, Mouin. There are so many levels in between. يعني, what's the point of being alive but hungry, starving, depressed, full of anxiety, full of stress? شو سوين؟
Of the minimum, the decency of a minimum basic civil way of living.
I think,
When everything is taken away, there is nothing left on us. Nothing. To the point where even if our children did not get hurt and we are alive and we don't know how we are alive, I do not know, and I'm one of the hundreds of thousands who says, I don't know how I am alive. I was in downtown. My office is gone. I walked over dead people to get home. I don't know how the fuck I am alive. But even that, they've taken my life from me because now my 15-year-old is leaving the country to go and live in Abu Dhabi. So even if our kids didn't die, even if we didn't die, we are still losing the best parts of us. And there's whatever's left of our hearts. So, halla. Now that we've lost it all, now that we have nothing else to lose, are we really gonna rise up and unite and put all of this fucking bullshit aside and really start being patriotic and thinking, do we deserve this country even, and to call ourselves Lebanese? This is where we have to begin.
I was, one of the sad things that I was seeing was the children. That for me, it was two things. And I read something also on social media. When I saw the videos of the children, and one of the kids was walking towards the window and the nanny was with the other two, I'm sure you saw this video, and the whole window falls on the kid, and the kid falls down, gets up, and he's, in the first few seconds, he's quiet. He's just completely shocked. And then he starts, you could see in the CCTV, you don't hear the sound, but you can hear him without sound, that he's just lost and he's crying and he doesn't know what's going on. And I'm thinking, God help this child for the next 20 years. It's not about not getting hurt then. And the other side of this, which was very sad, is I saw this article about all the elderly that have given their lives to this country and their memories and all of that. And then suddenly, at the end of their journey of life, he doesn't have his favorite bench to sit outside or his favorite grocery store. And I'm like, man, like these two extremes, what they will have to deal with mentally,
We don't know yet.
I think our psychologist bill is going to skyrocket through the roof after a while, because I believe to a certain extent we all have PTSD. Yeah. You're right, Anas, that it's all ages of the population that were affected, and especially Maram Khaila and Jumayzi. Although we go there to have fun, to their great restaurants, great bars, and what have you, the population over there is usually very aged, between the ages of 60, 70 to 80. And the next day actually during the aftermath that night, I went to Jumayzi and I went to Maram Khaila to try to help people, and I would try to break down doors to try to get to them because they weren't able to get up, or because they're just simply old. I also noticed that one way, maybe that's just me, but one way I was able to kind of overcome this level of PTSD, or at least decrease the amount of money I have to pay to my psychologist, would be by just helping people more and more. I feel like the more you help people, and I don't know if it's shallow to say, but that instant gratification that you get from helping people eclipses, if you will, the bad memories and tries to make place for new ones. Maybe to a certain point, you just have to keep going so that you don't see what's behind you, because if you do, a lot of things are going to catch up with you. And I feel that was very pivotal for me to do. Now, there's another point with my friend's son. He is a person, he's a 15-year-old kid. He's Marianne's kid's age. And this kid was, because of the Thawra, because of the revolution, this kid didn't have to go to school. And after things started getting back to normal, there was the entire economic collapse. And after that, there was the COVID-19 pandemic. And this kid was basically robbed of, let's say, his year as a student. And on top of that, there was the explosion that happened. And I asked her, I asked her, why doesn't this child go down with us and try to help people? And she very simply told me that he doesn't have to. You know, I don't want to expose him to this level of carnage. And I just want him to, you know, be a 15-year-old, think about girls, you know, do his own life, live, live the life of a normal 13-year-old. And I feel that that's also a solution, you know, to each and every person, their own way to cope. And everything is permitted at this point, you know.
I agree with you, Mouin. I have a 15-year-old daughter who I بخدها بشعرات على تنزل تساعدني ومدري شو, and you know who. But I sent her away and I said, Mom, go and have fun and see your friends and go out. This is not the childhood that I am responsible for. This is not, as a mother or a father, this is not what we're imagining for our kids. So no, they don't have to be part of this, and no,
They don't.
it's not their problem. And this is not their problem. This is our problem.
Then I have one more point that I found quite, I don't know, it was even not being Lebanese, it hurt me when I heard Dima say this, coming from her. And she said, why? I'm like, if you're going to ask any of the attendees of this conversation, what would you ask them? And she said, why haven't they given up on Lebanon? So I'd love to hear that from each one of you.
Go ahead.
I'll continue before I listen. She said, for her, Beirut is not dead, but something in her died.
Absolutely.
It will never be the same. The streets, the places, everything that she knew is not there. So what are we fighting for?
I go first, or who goes first? How are we doing this?
يعني نحن نشوف وجهك انت وجهك حاط منخشف الظلام ما نشوفك يعني.
أنا هون. The voice is enough.
يلا.
For me, I grew up in the States till I was 17 in Florida. So the first time I ever touched Lebanon, I was 17 years old. I was raised by my grandmother. And so obviously there's a whole background with that. And Lebanon was the first place that became my home. I never had a home before in terms of a secure home. This is where I made myself. This is where I was free. This is where nobody knew who I was, and I was so free to be able to be whoever I wanted to be. And this is where I grew. This is where I saw, you know, at the office in DHL where I worked for 16 years, downtown come to life. This is where my roots ended up becoming. This is part of who I am. If you take me out of here and everybody says to me, leave the country, you will become a millionaire abroad. And it is not about that. If I leave, what is in my soul and who I am as Mariana, and who knows me, will die with it. This is my home. And only when you are ready to die for it, and only when you are ready to fight and die till the end, even though we are already dead now, that's when maybe change will come. And if this change, it's not going to come in my lifetime, then at least I would have tried, even if it's not in my lifetime, because we have to plant the seed. We have to plant the seed. Or we decide all to just give it up and decide there's no more country called Lebanon. So I'm not leaving. I'm not going anywhere until I'm not going anywhere. Not for now, not for a long time, inshallah.
Gino.
I think the reason we haven't given up and are still fighting is because we can, very simply. So I don't know if it would be a conscious, rational choice to do this for the past X amount of years, almost 10 years now, you know, wasting the potential you might have had, etc., having the headache, getting into trouble for it, always being unhappy in one sense or the other. But we have a responsibility to do that because we can. A lot of people who want to do the same thing cannot. They cannot afford to. They don't have the time. Their family situation doesn't let them. So I find myself in a position a lot of time as I am one of the lucky few that can do something and still fight. So I have to do that, and I do it with a lot of passion and happiness and hope always, even in the darkest hours. Not like, hey, let's be hopeful, this kind of positive energy that doesn't actually help, but one where like, why should they win? You know, why should we give it up so easily? This is not, we are strong enough, smart enough. We network together enough to deserve to do a better job than what's been happening. So this is the reason why I haven't given up. And maybe some people will be like, why don't you all give up already, blah, blah, blah. Because simply for me, we can. We have the ability to. So we must. It's not like pick and choose what you do on a Saturday night. This is, we can do this. We need to do this.
Absolutely. Right. And I wouldn't trade my place here for anything in the world. One of the hardest pills, to a certain extent, that I had to swallow while doing this activist role was, whatever it is that I'm doing, I'm not going to enjoy it maybe until later, because we are really, what me, Gino, and Mariana are doing is really creating or setting the seeds for something else to bloom. And that will be felt at a later stage, maybe in the next generation or what have you. And I think that kind of vocation is very important. I completely agree with what Gino said. We do this because we can. We do this because it is our duty as Lebanese, but most importantly as human beings. And we're able to do that. We're able to get the message through. And thanks to your platform, we're able to get this message further. What I learned from this experience, and it's something, again, I wouldn't trade for the world, is in any catastrophe, in any difficult situation, the nature of the person is shown. Like the veil of bullshit is removed, and you truly see what the person is actually made of. And what I was disappointed in some cases, I'm not going to lie, but I was also very happy with what I've seen, and the positive outweighed the negative. And this kind of exposure to despair and sadness really just even strengthened my resolve even more to push further, because I'm seeing the change actually happen on the ground. And I'm reporting back to Gino because I'm his correspondent, obviously, but I'm seeing what is happening.
Not correspondent, you're my brother, Mouin.
I still need money. But I'm actually seeing the change happening on the ground, and you can see this shift in mentality, and you can see this level of fed-upness that, to a certain extent, maybe was subdued by outside forces, by greater forces since the October 17th revolution. But now it's springing back up, and with a much bigger, let's say, vocation, because now, literally and figuratively, things have exploded in our face, and we have the ability to actually enact some change and to see it grow and bloom. And hopefully Marianne's daughter will come back and see a much more beautiful place.
Habibi.
Anas, I guess one way to put it is that change for life, for human beings in Lebanon is gonna change, but it's our job to make sure it doesn't take as long as it has already. So change is coming. It's impossible not to come, but we can't wait anymore. We're running out of time. So we need it to be much quicker and for the better. We want a better life, not a different life per se. We want it to be better. It could change and become much worse. That's always a possibility. So that's why Kamena, because we can try to make sure that this change is for the better, not for the worse, and doesn't take another 3-4 generations like it already has.
Yeah,
and sorry, go ahead, Anas.
No, finish, because after this I wanted to ask 2 more questions.
I just wanted to add, Kamen, Gino, like your platform, Anna's platform, my platform, and now Anna's platform, we're able to spread the information much faster. Before, because of the technology that was a bit archaic, things took a lot longer. And now, because we have such a powerful message that transcends nationality, that transcends a lot of things and just gets to the human essence of it, we're able to make this battle known and have help from abroad to kind of enact this change. So I just wanted to raise that point that our voices now are amplified, and thankfully they're not as easily silenced as before.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I ask you now to be, let's make this even more beneficial, right? What does Beirut need today in terms of aid or support? And maybe even inshallah in the caption, I'll let the team also put the right organizations that hopefully, because a lot of people have trust issues. They're like, is that a corrupt organization? Is it not? Or do they even need food? Or they need aid? Or they need books? Like it's so random. And I think listening to three of you, in summary, this is before the last question, but how if somebody's watching this and thinks, I want to do something, inshallah, khams dirham, how can I support?
You can support by, there's a lot of rebuilding that has to be done, a lot, 15 billion worth. So when we're counting on the international community, there has been a lot of estimates that we probably won't even get over 100 million worth when we need 15 billion worth, okay? You're talking about 800,000 homes, 300,000 displaced, 15,000 almost destroyed, heritage sites destroyed, museums destroyed. So there, we, you know, first of all, you have to know the trusted organizations. And one of the reasons we started Bukhash is people were telling me, I want to send you money. I'm like, what do you, I mean, what? They're like, we're really worried about what are the trusted organizations. There has been a lot of exposure as to who are the trusted organizations. They can come back to Gino, Mouin, myself, or anybody else and ask. You have people like Impact Lebanon, Akid, like, you know, all of the, everything with Mintashireen, Base Camp, everything they're doing. You have Bukhash, you have Beit al-Baraka, you have the Red Cross who needed a lot of support and they've been getting. You have the hospitals were in mayhem. If you see the CCTV videos of the hospitals, it is, I mean, you can't make this shit up in a movie. Okay, so go to the hospitals because they're also legit. Do your research, ask your friends around, and then you will get to the right places. But do we need help? Even if you can't donate. Do you know that exposure, getting us to the press, exposing the NGO, it leads min shila teni. There are also people who are sending raw materials, aluminum, steel, glass, containers of that. We're also procuring teams and sending it. So إذا نحن ما فينا نستقبلهم نعطيهم لرايز and build، أم نعطيهم brick by brick، أم نعطيهم للعالم يلي هني عم بيعملوا all of the rebuilding. This is about how are we going to seriously join forces and whatever we can get in deploy. But Anas, we need a lot of support. A lot of support. Well, I'm not
Help us.
to say it.
Mouin.
I completely agree with what Mariana said. There are so many, you know, amazing initiatives that sprung up out of this level of despair. I think for me, the most important way you can help is just to talk about Lebanon. There was a hashtag that was trending, hashtag talk about Lebanon, because it's important to constantly shed light on what we're going through. We can start talking about the specific stories everyone went through, and just to keep the eyes on Lebanon, to keep the conversation going, because I don't want to be a victim of this 24-hour news cycle that completely just on to the next one changes. Because as you said, Anas, at the beginning, this is a long fight, and we need to, we need to hold our breaths and just constantly talk about just how we want to rebuild this city. I think that's just the most important thing. I know it's a bit metaphorical. I think Mariana did a great job at illustrating what are the NGOs that need to be helped, but just talk about the country and, encourage it.
I agree also, because I feel, subhanAllah, the timing of this video is also coming and hopefully being published at the time where people are starting to talk about other things, and I'm like, no, تعالوا الموضوع Gino.
I'm gonna count on what Mariana and Mouin said, and they're on the ground. But I would say that because of the immediate relief is, I don't want to say covered, but it's getting enough attention. The rebuilding isn't getting enough. attention yet, because people are still in the search and rescue phase, mostly, at least in their mind. So a way people can help is definitely finding an NGO that they trust. All of them are present online now. You can find out who it is. Just always double check that it's people you trust, people you share human ideals with, and help the people rebuilding. Because beyond search and rescue and the immediate relief, we need to rebuild the houses at the end of the day. This is the number one priority. People can't stay living in makeshift tents and unfortunately on the street for much longer.
Winter is in a few months. I mean, we're trying to run.
It's almost fall already in Lebanon, and you know it's a very, very wet.
The elderly, we cannot leave our elderly. We just cannot leave them. I mean, we are visiting these homes. I don't want to take any more of your time, but I wanted to add to something Mouin was talking about. To talk about it. We're visiting the homes, and we have asked every single person on the team to make sure that anybody who wants to talk about their story, that they listen to them. ما نكون جايين بس تاخدوا measurements وتفلوا من هونيك. You have to listen, because these families, like all of us, are traumatized, and the more we talk about it, the more we talk about this experience, the more we can face it. And through that, we can link them to NGOs, mental health, أكل, hospitals. So our teams have been clearly, I said to them, ما نكون منو جايين تزبطوا وتفلوا، جايين تزبطوا وفي شيء much bigger than that. So there's a huge healing process that has to take place, and people have to listen to us, unfortunately, and to these stories.
Well, last question. Each one of you, if you can answer it, you can take your time. It's simple but complex, maybe at the same time, and it is what is Lebanon to you in one word?
Home, of course. Home is the word then.
Mariana, ضحكتي انت، شو اللي فكرتي؟
A cheating boyfriend who's an asshole and keeps breaking my heart every single time, and I keep going back as Habla. This is what it is. This is what it is.
I need one.
ما بقدر.
Mouin.
I heard someone say it before, and I think it's brilliant. I think Lebanon is a full-time job because it's a love and hate relationship. Sometimes you don't get what you want out of it. Sometimes you do. Fortunately, in my case, the positives outweigh the negatives. But yeah, it's definitely a full-time job. Being Lebanese is a full-time job.
It's 3 words, but I'll take it. It's okay. شكرا على وقتكم. Mariana, Gino, Mouin. It's nice to meet Mariana and Gino for the first time virtually. Mouin, subhanallah, I met you 2 weeks ago, I think. And a few days after I'm like, wow, what happened?
It's crazy.
Anas, thank you. عن جد ميرسي كثير. شكرا على كل شيء عم تعملوا. It's good to see you, Mouin and Mariana. Love virtually. I miss you guys.
عبالي عبطكم بيناتكم.
أنا كمان.
Thank you from all of our hearts and what's left of them. Thank you so much. والله.
We appreciate it.
بوسكن يا شباب يا حلوين، الله يحميكم.
Bye guys.